that goes up.
Oh, God.
So she was completely unaware of what she was banning,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going with these scary terms and they're just trying to ban whatever they can kind of get their hands on.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what they have wrong, they just misunderstand completely what these rifles are and what their purpose is. And the entire purpose of these assault weapons, of these AR-15s, is that they're meant to resist the very people who are trying to legislate against them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very big catch-22 for me. How can the government legislate firearms when the whole purpose of firearms, as detailed in our Constitution, is to ensure and keep our government in check?
Mm-hmm.
The entire American political system, how everything works, our government works, is just all about checks and balances.
Yeah.
When you start imbalancing that, you're going to have an issue. Firearms are the balance against the government.
Yeah.
Or as a lot of people like to say, and I think is probably a more apt term, is the second protects the first. The First Amendment, the first thing the Founding Fathers wrote is they said, this is also a joke, so I'm paraphrasing from a really famous comedian, but he said, you can say whatever the fuck you want. And then they're like, well, you might want to have a gun if you do that.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's true.
Yeah.
You want to be able to protect your right to have that freedom of speech.
Yeah.
That's going to be very important. So what do they have wrong? They just, on a fundamental level, they misunderstand the weapon itself, what their purpose is, and that they actually can't legislate against them because it's unconstitutional. Therefore, it is illegal.
Yeah, I think it ties into the whole checks and balances, and it does come down to control, and that is why we have the Constitution and our amendments to protect these things. And something big that we've seen attacked, not just 2A, but it's our 4A, which backs the 2A. And we've seen this attacked during COVID. And this is something that's being attacked on a lot of spectrums, but we see it most with 2A because this is a huge issue and it is something in our Constitution.
That's interesting. I never actually thought of that. Can you expound upon that more? So a lot of people, I'm sure, aren't familiar with what the Fourth Amendment is, for example.
Yeah, so the Fourth Amendment, don't quote me verbatim, but I know it's like when the government steps in.
The right to protected privacy.
Yeah, right to protect privacy. And it's like the government can't step in and take control over your amendments and your freedom of speech. And it does support the checks and balances.
Yeah.
And so this is something with COVID that came when they were mandating, like, the government can't overstep onto a business and tell them how to run their business if what they're doing is constitutional. But we saw this with COVID where they were forcing business owners to vaccinate their employees and they overstepped the 4A.
It's interesting. I hadn't put that in a constitutional perspective. So for me, that's actually pretty illuminating.
Do you think that they do this intentionally to scare people into thinking that they might do something even though that they can't because of a constitution that bounds them to be able to not to do that?
But they have overstepped. They've already have. But
it's because
4A.
people have went along with it, is what I'm saying.
I think it's a great test.
Because they scared everybody into it.
Yeah.
Technically, the Daily Wire didn't do it.
Yeah, but that is because they went and fought the Supreme Court. That was a big court case that they paid for, that they fought against. Had they not done that, they would have had to bow down as well. But
That's a lot of
because
money.
they wanted to fight it. It was a lot of money, but
It's
it was
tough.
worth freedom.
Yeah.
And it's like the businesses, it's their decision to go out and do that and put that much money into it and put so much into that fight. But they went out and did it. But it also saved a lot of other businesses because they won.
That's
They
awesome.
fought the Supreme Court. But I think we see that one little thing, like you can't just take away one amendment and then everything's fine and we still have freedom. Once you take away one amendment, we're losing freedom. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I think the 2A has to be supported by the other amendments. And just like you said, like the freedom of speech is backed by other amendments. And it's kind of like a domino effect.
Well, sure. And I think you brought up a really interesting point, both of you, but to kind of segue off of it for a moment, when we talk about like, are they trying to scare people? I think a lot of these, whether it be laws against firearms or laws violating our privacy or
mandates
or anything like that, I think it's a great test bed, right? It's what can they do and what do we push back against?
Yes.
And I think what was really interesting to me was how quickly the media was able to get us to fold.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's most interesting to me is how fucking powerful a couple actors talking on a camera with a black and white filter and how quickly that affected people, and how there was very little critical thought, and any critical thought that was brought out was quickly, if you're familiar with 1984, A Brave New World, I mean,
Yeah.
Is it Brave New World? God. If you're familiar with like 1984, it's this idea of like a wrong think, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't go along with this narrative, you were ostracized in many ways. We lost, I know me and Ash lost a lot of friends who, fell in different ends of the political spectrum over this stuff because people were they got so, attached to this idea of you have to wear a mask. And if you don't wear this mask, you're not working together. And we have to work together as America to fight COVID. Yeah. And you're not working with this. Therefore, you are a terrorist, you're a MAGA, Trump, or whatever the hell it was. I don't care. But it was interesting how quickly people folded, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That scared me a lot.
Yes. And that's why I bring that up is like, it's a mandate. It's not a law.
Yeah.
And yet in the military, it was treated as a law.
Yeah.
And I'm out of the military now, so fuck it. But in the military, psychotic.
Yeah.
It was absolutely psychotic.
Yeah.
I was getting, at the time, medically discharged. Everything was fine. And you're not supposed to have to get vaccines when you're medically discharged. And I won't get too much into it on this, but it was extremely, extremely intense. Some of my friends who fought it all the way to the end, they got discharged over the vaccine. And some who didn't were forced to get it, ended up having a lot of problems from it. So.
Yeah. My stepdad had to get it.
Yeah.
And there was just no other option.
Mm-hmm.
It got crazy.
Yeah.
It got really crazy. And if you worked for the government, I'm sure some viewers do here, it was insane.
Yeah. And it's not about the fact, like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. It's the fact that people wanted to fight to protect our Constitution and our amendments and our rights. And that's what the fight was about. It was never about, well, it's lame that you're wearing a mask, or I think it's stupid that you're getting a vaccine. It was never about that. No. But it's about protecting the freedom that we are privileged to live in this country with.
But I think enough fear porn from the media can scare the shit out of people enough to be like, well, it's not about the Constitution. It's about saving old people. And
people are dying. And it's like, by the way, 0 flu cases this year. Flu is gone.
Absolutely none.
No flu.
So what do you have to say about